The Trail of Tears stands as a stark reminder of a dark chapter in American history. It is a haunting testament to the suffering endured by Native American tribes. It is a story of forced removal, suffering, and resilience. The journey was marked by immense hardship and loss, yet also by the incredible strength of those who endured it. In the 1830s, the United States government forced thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands. This was done under the guise of progress and expansion. These tribes were relocated to territories west of the Mississippi River. The journey was treacherous, with many losing their lives to disease, starvation, and harsh weather conditions. This event, known as the Trail of Tears, left a permanent scar on the nation's conscience. It is remembered as a period of profound injustice and inhumanity. The Trail of Tears was not a single event. It was a series of forced migrations that spanned several years, affecting multiple tribes and countless individuals. It was a series of forced migrations that spanned several years. Each step of the journey was fraught with peril, and the seasons brought their own challenges, from blistering heat to freezing cold. The Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole tribes were most affected. These tribes, each with their own rich cultures and histories, faced unimaginable hardships. Driven by the desire for land and fueled by prejudice, the U.S. government enacted policies that led to the displacement and suffering of countless Native Americans. These policies were a stark reflection of the era's attitudes and priorities, prioritizing expansion over human dignity and rights. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 set the stage for the Trail of Tears, a tragic and devastating chapter in American history. This act, signed by President Andrew Jackson, authorized the government to negotiate treaties with Native American tribes, fundamentally altering their lives forever. The goal was to exchange their ancestral lands in the southeast for lands west of the Mississippi River, a move that was framed as beneficial but was deeply exploitative. The act was met with resistance from many Native Americans, who saw it as an affront to their sovereignty and way of life. They considered their land sacred, intertwined with their cultural and spiritual identity, and were unwilling to leave the lands of their ancestors. However, the U.S. government used coercion, intimidation, and broken promises to force tribes into signing treaties, often under duress and without fair negotiation. These treaties often ceded vast amounts of land in exchange for meager compensation and the promise of safe passage west, promises that were frequently broken, leading to immense suffering and loss. The forced removal of Native American tribes began in the 1830s, a dark chapter in American history. The Cherokee Nation, despite having adopted European customs and having a written language, was among the first to be targeted. They had built schools, churches, and a government modeled after the United States. The Cherokee were forcibly removed from their homes in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. Families were torn apart and their properties were seized. Other tribes, including the Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole, faced similar fates. Each tribe had its own unique culture and history, which were disrupted by the forced relocations. They were rounded up by soldiers and forced to march hundreds of miles to designated Indian territory in present-day Oklahoma. This journey is infamously known as the Trail of Tears. The journey was arduous and filled with hardship. Many suffered from exposure, disease, and starvation along the way, leading to a significant loss of life. Section 4. A Trail of Tears, Hardships and Suffering. The journey west became known as the Trail of Tears for a reason. Native Americans endured unimaginable suffering along the way. They faced hunger, disease, and exposure to the elements. Many died from starvation, exhaustion, or sickness. Families were torn apart, and communities were shattered. The forced removal stripped Native Americans of their land, their homes, and their way of life. The trauma of this experience would have a lasting impact on generations to come. Section 5. The Enduring Legacy, Cultural and Human Impact. The Trail of Tears left an indelible mark on Native American communities. It resulted in the loss of life, land, and cultural identity. Tribes were forced to rebuild their lives in a new and unfamiliar environment. The impact of the Trail of Tears continues to this day. Many Native American communities still struggle with the consequences of this historical injustice. The loss of land, language, and cultural practices has had a profound and lasting effect. Section 6. Remembering the Past, A Lesson for the Future. Remembering the Trail of Tears is essential. It serves as a reminder of the human cost of prejudice, greed, and the abuse of power. By acknowledging and understanding this dark chapter in American history, we can learn from past mistakes. The Trail of Tears should inspire us to strive for justice and equality for all people. It is a story that must be told and remembered so that such atrocities are never repeated.